Hello, hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, where do you join us from?
Kyle, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Kyle Ulrich. I am with the Amazon SageMaker JumpStart team, and I am based out of Chicago.
All right, I assume it's not cold or snowing today, right, Kyle?
Not today. It's a pretty nice day today.
All right, awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, I am from Newcastle in Washington. That's a small town right next to Seattle. I'm really excited to be here today.
All right. So Jasmine, I'm pretty excited to get this started here because I guess we've had a preview. We saw the demo once before, but I'm always excited to see a demo. But I think the first thing we should do is have June. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what we're talking about here. And first, for anybody out there who doesn't know SageMaker, maybe we should define both SageMaker and Llama here.
Yeah, I think that's good. So I'm here today to introduce our new family of Gen AI models called Llama 2, as Jeff mentioned, as well as Art. And they are developed by Meta. And we'll also walk you through how customers can access these models from SageMaker JumpStart. JumpStart will give easy access to these models and then be able to use them fairly easily. Should I start from the Gen AI and go way up there?
You should, but I will point out that everybody now knows we're completely live as animals make some noise. So let's intro the kitty behind you here. So
that's my 13 years old cat Sunny. She's usually not up there, but I think she knows that she's on the show.
All right, welcome, Sunny. Hey, Jasmine, do you have a cat?
I do not.
All right, well, that's too bad. I was hoping for 2 cats. Kyle, cat, no cat?
I have 2 dogs.
All right. Maybe we'll have another appearance. I'm game for more animal appearances, Jasmine. All right.
I'll bring my little on one day.
All right. As long as they cheer about Llama here. So maybe we can talk about some of the new features, June, associated here with Llama 2, and give people an idea of what we're launching here.
Yeah.
Or what you have launched.
Sure. So like I said, Llama 2 is a new family of Gen AI models. And what generative AI is that it's a type of AI that can create contents based on the user's inputs. These contents can include conversations, stories, images, and even videos and music. And these Gen AI are powered by very large models that are trained on very large data set. And because of the fact that it's trained on the large data set, they are very large in size. And because they are large, they're fairly expensive to build as well. So for many of the customers, it's more a cost-effective option to use these pre-trained models rather than training something on their own from the start. And these models are often referred as Gen AI models or foundation models. For the text-related ones, they're also called as large language models or LLM these days.
And so we've talked, I think a lot of people have heard of the term large language models before, but we've used the word large here a few times. And I'm wondering if maybe, could we put some quantification, June or Kyle, around large?
Yeah, so in case of Llama, they come in 3 different sizes. And when we talk about sizes, we're talking usually about number of parameters. And the Llama has variations of 7 billion, 13 billion, and 70 billion parameters. These numbers are growing so fast that just last year, the highest number that I've seen was 7 billion, and 2 years ago, it was in millions. So just over two years, it grew up to 70 billion, and it's growing even faster. So that's the number that we're talking about, and I don't know how long it's going to take for me to count from 1 to 70 billion.
Well, don't try while we're here. Otherwise, right, we don't have enough time today for that. But you can start after the show's over. Let us know how it goes.
Okay. But with the Llama 2, they also come with the fine-tuned variants optimized for the chat use cases. So in total, we have 6 different type of Llama 2 models in SageMaker JumpStart. And depending on customers' need and their use cases, they can pick and choose whichever one that suits their need the best. Now, in case of the smaller ones, they obviously run on smaller instances and they run a little bit faster, actually a lot faster. But in case of the larger models, they might be slow and require more computing power on the instance side, but they can handle more sophisticated use cases. So there are different kind of performances and costs trade-off that customers need to decide, but there are variants that customers can choose from.
Yeah, it sounds like it gives customers an opportunity to scale for what it is that they need.
Yep, exactly. And what we learned so far is that the larger one isn't always the best one for every use cases. So in many cases, customers actually need a very simple generative AI model, but the speed of inferencing is the most important one. So in those cases, customers actually are better off using the smaller model and just run on smaller instances so that they can stay cost optimized as well as optimized for the performance or speed. So those are some of the considerations that customers will need to do.
Yeah, I guess it's just like regular compute as well in other spaces, June, where you have to consider what are your important kind of guardrails or factors, right? Like, do you need something with a lot of memory? Do you need time? Time for a lot of companies is really important depending upon, I mean, down here, Jasmine, today, this person, Taylor Swift, has come to town. I can imagine, you want, if you're buying a ticket, online, you want a response really, really fast, right? For it. So you prioritize speed over other things, right? So in this instance, right, if you're using a generative AI model for something and more may not be, bigger may not always be better. So yeah, it's great. All right, so I think we're getting close that it's time for Kyle to bring up a demo here. So what do you say, Kyle? You ready to go?
Yeah. Before I do, I've got a few reading materials and a few more technical pieces on top of this model description.
Show it to us, Kyle. Come on.
Let's see it.
Let's see it.
So first and foremost, this is the paper that Llama released last week. It's 70 to 80 pages. It's actually really well written, and they go over a lot of concepts for these models.
And actually, I think we have a link to it, Kyle, so we can drop some information for people to take a look at to get more information about. We have a blog post and some page information. So maybe not the entire paper, but people take a look. And what's our other?
That would be great. So within this paper, they discuss several things about these models. They've got the 7 billion, 13 billion, and 70 billion parameter model. And just to add to the conversation about how big these models actually are, the way I like to think about it is 70 billion parameter model requires, if you multiply it by 2, because each parameter, if you load it in half precision, that's 2 bytes. So that's 140 gigabytes of CUDA memory that you require in order to load that model onto a machine. So this gets back to those very large instance types that are required to just load this 70 billion parameter model. The 7 billion parameter model, we utilize a minimum of a 24 gigabyte A10 GPU. So that's
these are really big numbers here as well. I mean, it's amazing to see the amount of both memory and parameters that we can handle here, Kyle.
Yeah, this field is moving very quickly. And one huge difference about these Llama 2 models is that they utilize a 4K context length. So that means if we see a lot of customers that want to do like summarization, like they've got a large document that they want to put into these models and summarize the content of that document. So really increasing that content length to 4K tokens, 4,000 tokens, is a huge deal for a lot of customers, whereas the previous Llama models were at a 2K context length is what they were trained at. They also
doubling the context model here, right? From 2K to 4K.
What's that?
I said you double from 2K now to 4K, correct?
Right. Yeah. And that's really starting to get on the threshold of a decent sized document that you're putting in, about 3,000 words. You can submit as an input query into this model. And then they also have technical details to speed up Llama 2, something called grouped query attention, and their data set that they published with. They don't talk too much about, but they do say they use 2 trillion tokens. So basically, they've trained this model on twice as much data as the original Llama model. And one thing that always comes to my mind, and I'm going to throw this out so everybody thinks of this now. They in their original Llama paper, they really defined the data set that they utilized for training those models. Subsequently, a public release data set that mimicked what was described in that Llama paper came out called Red Pajama. So if you don't get the reference, I stole this from my child this morning. It's Llama Red Pajama. And it is my second recommendation as a good read coming out of this demo here.
That's going to create some memory for people. They're going to remember the name of your service.
Yeah. It goes off in my head every time I work with Llama, so I'm just paying forward here.
Passing that off to everyone else.
They appreciate it. Jasmine, I'm sure you do too.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah, so we can pull up the demo, and while we pull that up, there's 2 additional topics that I'll talk through while we're working here.
Yeah, Kyle, I'm interested in knowing, like, as we're going into this, and you're gonna show us how to deploy. But why would someone want to deploy Llama 2 on SageMaker?
Right. Yeah. So SageMaker JumpStart has basically maintains a model hub of a large number of open source models. These models, continually get better over time, right? So you can look at, ML leaderboards associated with these models, and Llama 2 is performing extremely well. So if you are looking at getting into this field and looking at a good introductory model to work with, the availability of Llama 2 is a great starting point, especially with its availability in multiple model sizes ranging from 7 to 13 to 70 billion parameters.
I also want to point out that SageMaker JumpStart has its uniqueness in ease of use as well as level of control that customers can have. So customers can deploy models using UI with just a couple of clicks, or they can choose to use APIs that we provide to use programmatically on whichever ID they prefer. Subsequently, on the control side, these models are then deployed into customers' dedicated instances, and even if they're in VPC environment, these are all usable in those environments. And these are single dedicated instance so that no one else has access to the deployed instances. So customers can actually build a production applications off of the instances that are hosting these models, and they can control by integrating with other MLOps controls that SageMaker has, including pipelines as well as SageMaker debuggers. So those are some of the reasons why we think customers should be coming to JumpStart to discover the Llama 2 models and then get started on their journey.
It sounds like, June, you're saying that it makes it just even simpler for people to get started and launch here, especially people that, this may be what they're just thinking about working on as well, right? I mean, it's a great way to kind of get started. I think, that's one of the things, Jasmine, that I always like about Amazon is trying, not only do we launch these features that, Jeff and all of us were talking about earlier, but we also try to make it really easy to get going and get moving. I mean, this is kind of all of this is done in response to customers who provide us information, feedback, I should say. So, All right, Kyle, we've
So let's get into the demo then. So this is SageMaker Studio. So you can access Studio through a profile in SageMaker Console. You can look online how to access Studio.
Yeah.
I want to get into the models here. And there's 2 main things we want to do in this demo. One is demonstrate how to launch a model without ever touching a piece of code through the front-end user interface in Studio. And then the second is actually using the SageMaker Python SDK in order to launch a model. So we're going to click on this JumpStart tab, and this pulls up SageMaker JumpStart within Studio. And within here, we have a large number of what we call carousels. And these carousels have model cards on them. So at the top here, we have this foundation models carousel, which has a lot of very popular foundation models that we aggregate together. You can see overall, we have 82 results that we've populated into this single carousel. And again, these are foundation models. We have a large model hub of models outside of foundation models as well. And you can see we've got Llama 2 7B chat, 70B chat, 7B, 13B, 13B chat, and 70B. So these are 6 models that have been aggregated together into this carousel. So if we click on one of these, let's just choose this 13B model here. Llama 2 13B chat. So you click on that and you immediately get to this page that shows details about the model, how to run it in a notebook, a large markdown file associated with details on this model. What we're going to talk about here is deploying the model. So you can go into deployment configuration, and here you can choose which instance type you would like to deploy the model on. So this 13B model, we can fit on a 12x large instance. You can choose the endpoint name, and then you can also set security settings associated with this model. So this is a huge benefit of JumpStart, is that we can deploy all of these models in network isolation, and customers can utilize their own VPC in order to access these endpoints. So that's going off what June was just describing as a huge benefit for SageMaker JumpStart. So once we've defined these settings here, it's as simple as a one-click hitting this deploy button in order to deploy the model. So Llama 2 has a end-user license agreement and a acceptable use policy associated with it. This is a commercial model, or it's approved for commercial use. However, there are conditions associated with that. So we urge all customers to have their legal teams review these use policies. And we put it front and center so that before they even access it within SageMaker JumpStart, they have to say that they accept this EULA and acceptable use policy. So once you click that you accept that, now we're preparing the model, and it is going to launch an endpoint associated with that. So the model.
So just on a comment, Kyle, it's great that it's kind of just it's really easy, because you kind of have designed this as a template, if you will, with the typical kind of drop down boxes and everything. So I think this is a great example, Jasmine, about how simplified we have made this to deploy the model, at least so far, right, Jasmine?
Yeah.
Right, and there's a lot of, if you're just now getting into this field, there are a lot of parameterizations that you need to set if you were to go and try to deploy these models by yourself. Mm-hmm. So just figuring out the exact instances it works on, getting containers that can host these models appropriately, setting the parameterizations of those containers. These are all things that JumpStart handles under the hood and allows customers to easily interact through this front end interface.
That's great. I see the connection back here earlier. I know we talked about the announcement that we've had about some of the new GPUs from NVIDIA. I mean, I think in the drop down here, I can see the G5 and the P5D over there included. So, I think earlier, Kyle, you were mentioning CUDA as well. So I think a lot of people probably out there are familiar with the CUDA stuff from NVIDIA as well here. So I think that's kind of very germane to the overall conversation that we've been having today.
Right. So yeah, this is going to take several minutes to deploy. So we're not going to sit here and wait on this unless you want me to read Llama Llama Red Pajama. But what I do have is the SDK deployments as well. And I have already pre-deployed models through the SDK. So we don't have to wait on the endpoint to spin up and the model to load onto the GPU context on those endpoints. And so here, this is, you can actually access this notebook in the original model card. There's an open notebook button up top. So if you click that, that's going to pull up this exact notebook that we have here. It will fill in the model ID with the model ID from that notebook that you opened it from, and then you can run this notebook. So here we're going to deploy, and I've already deployed it, but a 7B model, and this is the original pre-trained model for Llama 2. And the JumpStart SDK is very simple through Python. So all you need is your model ID, and then you import from SageMaker.jumpstart.model, import JumpStart model, and then you pass that into the constructor of JumpStart model, your model ID, and then all you need to do is say predictor equals model.deploy, and this is going to deploy that model to an endpoint and return a attached predictor to that endpoint. So this is the full length of code that it takes to deploy a Llama 2 model through SageMaker JumpStart with Python.
Well, we can't say that it's, the amount of code is very large here, Kyle, obviously, but that's, I think, the key part of getting started, how simplistic it is.
Right.
To do deployment.
Yeah. It makes it feel a lot easier to interact with these models if all of the boilerplate that is necessary for launching a model can be hid underneath this model class.
Absolutely.
These cells here, this is just backup for me. I added this just in case we lost connection in this notebook. I can reattach the model.
Better to be prepared, right?
Yeah. So this is actually not part of the original notebook. So all that I'm doing here is now describing how to print a response. So this is just a very simple function, just to formulate input and output printing. But in order to query the model with a predictor, here's an example code block. So just as an overview here, we're going to send this endpoint inputs of, I believe the meaning of life is. We can define a set of parameters associated with this model. And the model, it's a text generation model, right? So it's going to take that initial input sequence and it's going to start generating texts that follow in the output sequence. So let's run this.
I'm a little nervous for what the response is going to be.
Yeah.
We'll watch this. We're going to get an error. And I'm going to explain why really quick. So if we come down here and read this, need to pass custom attributes except EULA equals true as part of the header. So you remember in Studio, we had, had that interface where we click the button that you accept the end user license agreement for this model. In order to implement that in the SDK, we have, anytime you predict from the model, we're going to be sending this custom attributes header into, along with your payload to the endpoint. And right here, we have accept EULA equals false. So any customer, and we set that by default in these notebooks so that customers aren't querying the endpoint and putting it into use cases without actually reading the EULA and knowing that they accept it for their particular use case. So once you've read the end user license agreement and you change this to custom attributes, you accept EULA equals true, and we can run this cell again. And here we go. So we get the input text, I believe the meaning of life is to be happy and to be able to help others. And it goes on in that light. So we can do this for a variety of other queries as well. Simply put, the theory of relativity states that space and time are relative, the speed of light is a constant, and the speed of light is the same for all observers. So it hits these statements pretty head on. And we can go through these really quick. I have to change all of these except EULAs to true. A brief message congratulating the team on launch. So this is generating a email style message using the 7B model. And then this last one is a translation task. So Llama 2 is actually trained on multiple languages. It's primarily English, but it can do pretty decent at simple translation tasks. cheese to fromage, and then it actually keeps generating more translations for you, even though you didn't ask for that originally. But that's because this is the original pre-trained model. It is basically just trained to keep generating information. If you want to utilize something that's more like interactive with a chat-based or like a dialogue interaction with the model, then you want to use their fine-tuned model. And they call this model, well, our model ID for it is Llama 2 7BF, F for fine-tuned. This is the chat-based version of the model. And this chat-based version has really been fine-tuned with the concept of reinforcement learning with human feedback. So when you read this original paper here, there's a large number of sections on how Meta actually went through and researched this human feedback with human preferences and how they implemented that. You can tell that with the outputs of this model, it is very applicable to a chat-based interface. So we can look at the differences here. When we send a prediction request to this model, this is what the prediction request looks like. The inputs are actually different. And the reason for this is that it is intended to be for a dialogue use case. So here we're having a user is asking, what is the recipe of mayonnaise? And if we run this, and again, this is on the 7 billion parameter model, right? So 70 billion parameter model is going to give more robust answers than this model here. What is the recipe of mayonnaise? And thank you for asking your question. Here is the recipe. And you can see how detailed this recipe is. It goes through all of the ingredients, instructions on how to create mayonnaise.
Well, I don't know about you, Jasmine, but first I'm getting hungry because it's lunchtime out here. So
Yeah.
that between like a recipe for mayonnaise, or the earlier mentions of other food, fromage, who doesn't like cheese? I think we're
learning how to ask for my lunch in French.
Make me feel more sophisticated as well.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, Kyle, we're getting toward the time here where we're going to have to wrap up because we have another really exciting demo coming on. Kyle and June, this was really good to see. I think it was great to see this model and to see one. I'm kind of impressed about how simple it is to get started and you're able to deploy something. And so it seems really easy, as someone mentioned as well with JumpStart here, to get moving in SageMaker. Any final comments, June or Kyle, here as we wrap up? I know we have another demo here. It's giving us information now about the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre, which are great vacation spots this year.
I want to just call out two things. One is definitely try out different type of variations from SageMaker JumpStart. And we also have other foundation models that are available for you to try. So we definitely welcome customers to come in and try. And we are always looking out for new models. So if you have a great use case and that you see a great model out there that want us to onboard to the JumpStart, we're more than happy to talk more about it and learn more about it and share with other users.
All right. Thank you, June. And thanks both to June and Kyle for joining us. I mean, a great conversation and really germane with the feature just launching and also kind of being picked as one of the hot news topics today by Jeff. So thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah, thanks, Art, Jasmine. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been fun.